Hello and welcome to Unwatchables, the film podcast about to put the in Australia. I am Marc Dottavio.
I'm Seth Troyer.
And today we are joined by film critic Laura Venning for two grim Australian thrillers spanning the decades of what has since been dubbed the Ozploitation genre. Both of these films faced controversy for their upsetting depictions of brutal violence, in one case the unsimulated kind, but that's nothing compared to what they say about human nature. They are Ted Kotcheff's 1971 psychological thriller Wake in Fright and Jennifer Kent's 2018 revenge western, The Nightingale.
Wow.
And here to guide us through Unwatchables Down Under is Laura Venning, a member of the London Film Critics Circle and a specialist in feminist cinema, queer cinema, and folk horror. Laura's writing has appeared in BBC Culture, Empire Magazine, Little White Lies, GQ, and many more. And her first book, Icons of Cinema, Greta Gerwig, is out now. So Laura, thank you.
Hello, thank you so much. I feel that first I need to apologize for not being Australian, because in many ways you guys should really have had a real Aussie rather than just someone who's interested in these weird, fucked up films, but, you know, just admiring from afar. Yeah.
You know, for dumb Americans like us, it's close enough.
It's like all kind of the same thing.
You could have fooled us.
It's true, actually.
You just said, reporting from the outback.
Genuinely, when I was at the Venice Film Festival last month, and a very nice American did ask me if I was Australian, and I found that that's not the first time, and I think I just found that weird because I'm like, I have the most like posh English accent, don't I? But this lady was like, "You Australian?" I was like, "No, I'm from London." But yeah, I am not Australian, and I have never been to Australia, but I have a strange fascination with these kinds of films. So looking forward to diving into it.
Yeah, me too. And I mean, I do want to ask a little bit about this new book that you have coming out, which sounds very watchable or readable compared to what we're talking about today.
Yeah, it's I just realized, having like rattled off my like credentials, like she loves folk horror and she's written a book about Greta Gerwig. But yeah, it's a fun little project. It's wrote it last summer, definitely in the kind of, I was commissioned to do it clearly very much in the post-Barbie haze. It's a gorgeous, bright pink, sparkly book, and it's a guide to her career, initially obviously as an actor in the kind of mumblecore scene, moving into the kind of small indie parts that she played, and then collaboration with Noah Baumbach and where she is today. And it's a very light, easy read. And I mean, what I really hope for it is it's the kind of book that I think will be you'll get for your 16-year-old niece who loved Barbie, the film Barbie, that is, obviously, and that maybe by reading this book, this 16-year-old girl will read a little bit about like Jacques Demy and Agnes Varda and other filmmakers that have inspired Greta Gerwig, and will hopefully get this. I've really got this hypothetical 16-year-old painted in my head, as you can tell, and hopefully that will mean this person will be inspired to get more interested in film. So yeah, it's really a beginner's guide to the career of Greta Gerwig, which has been just like a real treat to do. Yeah.
That's a great angle to kind of help maybe people work backwards, from something like Barbie into maybe some, a little more interesting cinema they might not have encountered before.
Yeah, it's been my like
16-year-old
guerrilla approach to just be like, I wonder how many references to like classic Hollywood I can kind of get in here that they'll let me do. And I'll talk a little bit about Joan Didion and like obviously Singing in the Rain with Barbie, that I'm just can number. It's pure Singing in the Rain. So it's been quite a fun little challenge to try and like hit all those things in one.
And especially to capture her right at this turning point, because I feel like in her life was probably going to be before Barbie and after Barbie, as far as being a filmmaker, an artist. And it'll be really interesting to see what she does from here at this point on. So this is a good place to step in and kind of look back at the phase one, perhaps.
Literally, yeah. Like,
check out Frances Ha.
yeah, exactly. Like,
Yeah.
heard you loved Barbie. Have you heard of Mistress America? You heard of, Cary Grant and Katharine Hepburn? Get into it. But yeah, I'm so intrigued about what the hell she's going to do with Barbie. I was obsessed with those books as a kid, and I know she will have been really drawn in by all the kind of Christianity stuff, because she's really into
the Narnia
that.
film that she's
doing.
doing.
The Narnia film.
Next,
yeah, which is.
Is that true? She's really doing that?
Yeah, she's literally shooting it in London right now. It's mad. They've been out and about doing it.
Man, she's just gonna keep on making Christian dads mad. It's exciting. It's really exciting.
I'm glad someone in Hollywood is doing it. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, there's no easy transition
Nope.
from that to what we're talking about today, except just to ask you what it was
There's
about
animals
Wake in
in
Fright.
this?
Yeah. Oh God, yes, there are.
Oh.
Charming
For a
animals
little while.
like in Narnia.
Yeah, God help them. But yeah, I know before we did end up pairing this with another Australian film, but I know Wake in Fright was the first one that jumped out at you. So I am curious about, why that was and what your first experience was with this film.
I think so. This is a film I'd only seen once before, but I think it leapt out, well, for several reasons. One being, I just really remember when I saw it for the first time. It was here in the UK, we had like 3 distinct periods of lockdown during COVID, and lockdown 3, which ran from like January 2021 to sort of April, May-ish, like May. That was the one where everyone was like really suffering. That was because it was winter and it was the 3rd time we'd done it, and it really felt like we are never getting out of here. And I think I just had, I think there was a night where I saw that this was on Mubi. It's one I'd always meant to watch. I'd heard it was really tough, but I'm interested in these Australian films, but I'd never got around to it. And I just had my heart horribly broken, so I was very sad, very depressed at the time, and I was like, what could be better for another Friday night stuck inside? It's fucking January. I feel terrible. I'm gonna watch Wake in Fright. And honestly, it really hit. I was just in such a like nihilistic, the world is hell state of mind, and that was a perfect time to watch it. I think I was drinking while I was watching it. I can't exactly remember what I was.
I kind of had no choice at a certain point. It felt like I had to.
Yeah, literally. It's like
definitely peer pressure.
Big time. And I remember first seeing this film somewhere around 2009 when it was kind of billed as like this great lost Australian film. Because I know when it first came out in 1971, I mean, it was well received apparently at Cannes and in France and the UK, but it had a pretty weak like box office in Australia, which I don't know, go figure, who wouldn't want to just go see this 100 times? But apparently it was one of those movies where the master negative was considered lost for like decades. And so there were just like, old shoddy VHS TV prints going around. And I remember in 2009, there was this big restoration because they had found the original negative, and, now it's out on Blu-ray. I think I might have watched like a 4K.
Yeah. Did you read that
like
they found the
print of
negative in like a shipping container? I was just reading about this where there was like a big sign on the side that was like to be destroyed. I always wonder like how does this happen? Like how does anyone find that shipping container? And anyway, but yeah, what a lucky.
It was crazy. It's like the Passion of Joan of Arc we talked about, which they found that print like in an asylum somewhere in a closet. So I guess you just got to keep your eyes open. You never know when you're going to find the original print of a lost film somewhere. So yeah, that was kind of a second life for it, and I think it's really gotten a lot of good, critical buzz and cult status now, especially that it's more available. It was kind of funny reading into this because we were talking about your friend Elena Lassick, who we had on. We talked about Natural Enemies, which is another almost kind of lost film for a little while, and is just so utterly bleak and stark. And then you click through to the director's filmography, and his was like Revenge of the Nerds, Troop Beverly Hills, and this Ted Kotcheff.
He had to cheer himself up.
Yeah. This guy, he's a Canadian director, not Australian, and he's much better known for the first Rambo film, for Weekend at Bernie's, Fun with Dick and Jane. it's so interesting to see. You know, I guess you assume that every director who makes a film like this is going to have their auteurist stamp on every film, but really, I mean, most directors are kind of go, you know, where the work is, and not a big Weekend at Bernie's vibe with this.
No, maybe Rambo.
Yeah, maybe a little Rambo.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I can see more of a parallel there. But I feel like I don't know whether this is just I can only think of two other examples, and in my head this makes a trend that there were quite a few of these like Aussie and New Zealand directors who made like, you know, cheap, weird little thrillers that did well, and then they went to Hollywood and made. I mean, it's not quite the same. Like, but I'm thinking of like Peter Weir, and there's a New Zealand director called Roger Donaldson who like started out, made this film called Sleeping Dogs with Sam Neill in one of his like earliest roles, and then went to Hollywood and made kind of fairly generic like action stuff. That's obviously not the same as Peter Weir, but yeah, a strange little pipeline. Although yeah, as like you say, this guy's Canadian, not Australian. But guess I'll have to add Weekend at Bernie's to my watch list after this.
Yeah. And this one falls into an interesting category of unwatchables in that there is sort of, you're kind of wondering like what it's you know, it's bleak, it's a little frightening. It is kind of about what brings it on the podcast is this one sequence, which I find even stranger in a film sometimes, where there's just, again, not that the rest of it is totally mainstream and going to please everybody's mom or something, but there's this kangaroo massacre in this movie that is just so intense to handle, that just really sticks out heavily in the movie and sticks with you.
Yeah, totally done for real, to be clear. Yeah.
Yes.
And
there's no mistaking it.
Unsimulated kangaroos killing.
Yeah, and it's funny. It is like, it's kind of a small part of the movie because it's just one scene, but it feels like a big part of it. It's certainly what sticks with you afterwards. And maybe it's the most like actual horror movie even feeling part, because it's interesting going into this movie. It really feels like at any moment we are going to stumble onto some sort of like, Wicker Man type situation or what is really going on in this town. But it isn't a horror movie. It's actually kind of hard to classify. I said psychological thriller. I suppose that's close. But psychological, I guess, is really the focus here, right?
Yeah,
absolutely. Is there a better way that you would classify this movie? Because it seems much more indefinable exactly what the threat is, which at least for a while is what I really like about this movie. It's so much just about this queasy, uneasy atmosphere, and you're not totally sure what the threat is or where it's going to be coming from, or what is going on with this town of people who should all be dead of alcohol poisoning by this point.
I mean, the point of comparison I just immediately thought of was Lord of the Flies, in the sense of, you know, there is nothing supernaturally horrifying actually happening. I mean, Lord of the Flies is a bit different. Kids do literally murder each other. But you know, where the revelation is kind of, and it was really about the darkness of humanity all along. But in a way, what I had completely forgotten is that this film does almost have a kind of happy ending. Like, I think in my head, I had slightly mixed up the order of the events, and I just couldn't quite remember how it ended. And no wonder, because there's this kind of reset back to normality in a way, like it's just another weekend in Australia, like, and now we're back to normal. But yeah, no, that's so true. It is really hard to classify, and you know, we'll talk about The Nightingale later, and obviously, like, that's got more of a relationship with the rape revenge kind of subgenre. But this is, I guess that's why they invented the term exploitation, to cover all these films about very sweaty men drinking and shooting things.
And that is a big part of the plot, but the plot itself, he's like a school teacher. They come here on holiday to, well, here being just like this weird Australian town in the middle of nowhere. Odd place to pick to be your vacation, for sure.
Well, he's trying to get to Sydney, I think, to visit this girlfriend we keep getting brief flashes of. But then he ends up losing all his money and kind of getting stranded among these people. And he's a British guy, so he's kind of unmoored here. He's a bonded school teacher I guess it basically means that like if he has to buy out his contract for like $1,000 if he ever wants to get out of this place, and that's part of his
I was
struggle
hazy
too.
on the finer details. I found them a little confusing. I don't know why. But
well, because plot-wise, there isn't really much.
Like, what are you doing here? I don't know.
You know, once he's marooned with these people, it's really about soaking in the atmosphere and the milieu and the heat and the sweat and the dirt and the flies and beer. We've alluded to
beer.
Yeah, to how much drinking is in this movie. And really, it's everyone, whether it's this friendly sheriff that he meets and hangs out with a little, or it's the maniacs that he ends up following around for a good part of the movie. No matter who they are, everyone's got a beer in their hand. And before you can even start it, they're bugging you to get the next one, to chug it, get the next one. And God forbid you refuse them. Even the friendliest person gets offended if you don't follow them down, you know, that rabbit hole. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know how much that reflects the actual culture around that area at the time, but this seems like one of the most like booze-drenched movies I've ever seen.
It feels sticky, doesn't it? Like,
yes, warm beer.
If not realism, there must be some kind of just leaning into and satirizing that kind of culture, which does seem like it is like it's just something you have to do, or it does feel like a transgression anytime. Like, especially towards the end where he's just like, no, I don't want a beer. And it's like, but you're going to just leave without a beer? And it's like, knowing that, like, as we see throughout the movie, like, one beer leads to him waking up in the middle of the desert with no clothes on or something. You know, just like the most horrifying thing. Where it's like, but it always starts out as like, as simple as like, well, you shake my hand, you know? Like,
I think one of the reasons that I mean, this is a much more extreme version, but I think Australia sometimes feels like, and I'm sorry to the Australians listening, and I don't mean this like negatively exactly, like the UK's shadow self. Like, a lot of Australian culture feels quite like a kind of strange mirror version of UK culture. And I'm thinking about this in relation to drinking culture, because the UK has a very strong drinking culture, and it has shifted a little bit, I would say, more recently, but a slightly similar attitude and like pub culture is such a big deal. And if you don't drink, you know, in the UK, I think it's kind of assumed that if you don't drink, you're either like very religious or you're an alcoholic, so you can't, because like why else would you not, you know? And there is an element of that kind of pressure. I mean, particularly between men. I mean, obviously this is not something that I can talk about, but I think that is a strong element in UK culture, and you see that reflected. And the kind of Australian culture as a little bit of a kind of refracted vision of UK culture. I just find that really, really interesting. And yeah, I don't know if you guys can speak to it, but like the pressure that men tend to put on each other to like one up each other by drinking a shitload of beer, like it feels very real.
And just the sheer, I don't know. It seems pretty transparent what goes on, like early on in the film, is a pretty like neediness, like a loneliness. Is just, do they really like drinking, the actual act of drinking all that much, or is it more just like keeping you here, like, and not being alone in a room with my thoughts for a second, like not only obliterating it with alcohol, but like I'm keeping a person here with me and they're doing it with me, and like we're escaping the world together. Because anytime anybody like just wanders off, you know, they're like, hey, get back here, you're supposed to be drinking with us, we're having a drinking night, you know, kind of thing. It is just really sad, kind of lonely stuff going on.
Yeah, it's almost existential. And I like how it's just constantly in the background, with like never going away and affecting everybody without necessarily being like the subject of the film.
The thing they have to do.
Yeah, that much feels like very astute. And, you know, like I was saying that for a while, the film, it just kind of has this uneasiness and exhaustion to it, where you're not really quite sure what the other shoe is that's going to drop. And it kind of I kept thinking about this
that's also
movie
my favorite part.
Yeah. This movie from a few years ago called The Royal Hotel.
Yes.
With
oh my
Julia
God.
Garner,
yes. Yeah.
which is also takes place in Australia, and it also just has this unidentifiable menace for like almost the whole film, where you're not quite sure what's going to happen.
I know, obviously, getting shit-faced with these strangers is scary and wrong, but like there's something else, something alien behind it that you feel.
But I do
I
feel
don't know
that
if it necessarily totally touches on all aspects of it, which I think is to its credit. I think it would add to its rewatchability of kind of this like, what is this sinking feeling? You know,
I think what it turns out to be is actually reminded me more of Straw Dogs. I kept thinking of just with you have this kind of intellectual guy who, as opposed to trying to kill the brutes who are terrorizing him, he's kind of awkwardly seeing how far he can join in with these degenerates. And I think that's ends up being like, what the central like conflict of the movie is. And we have Donald Pleasance, who also is quite memorable in this movie, who himself,
Dr. Loomis.
He's a doctor. So he's like this educated man, but he's embraced this nihilistic lifestyle of just constant
he's escaped
hedonism.
Michael Myers. He's got a... he's trying to blast his brains with alcohol.
I mean, who wouldn't have a drinking problem after having to deal with Michael Myers over again? Like, who wouldn't?
It's evil. Do you know what evil is?
I shot him 10 times in the heart.
I just kept on waiting for him to go into, like, some of his monologues bordered on that. He does kind of have this thing that, Donald Pleasance does, which is just, I love it every time, but it is that, pontificating about evil, or in here, like, just sort of dread and meaninglessness. Although he's a lot more dazed eyes in this. He's an interesting character in that he's like the village. I don't know. Yeah, he's an outsider. Clearly, he like explains that he could never have a place in common society. But here he's kind of like an eccentric celebrity, sort of, because he can kind of rise above some of the, for lack of a better word, brutes of this place. Because he's witty. He actually does have some knowledge of the world and things like that. But just he does the exact same thing they do, which is just roll around, getting drunk, waking up just after beating the shit out of each other and ready to do it again the second he wakes up, kind of thing.
Yeah, so I think that he's maybe supposed to be like a possible future for our main character, because he also is an educated man who's kind of dabbling in this stuff. And I think the actor who plays him, Gary Bond, does a good job of being like a little patronizing, but he is kind of fascinated by them. As I guess he's kind of the Dustin Hoffman type character from Straw Dogs. And it's interesting. I guess this actor has only been in like 3 films, and the rest was kind of theater. And maybe it's because this movie disappeared that he didn't really go anywhere from this, but I mean, I thought he was really good.
Yeah, did you guys see that initially, when they first were going to adapt the book, because it's based on a book, that it was going to be Dirk Bogarde, which I can absolutely see, because Dirk Bogarde loves nothing more than just playing a little freaky guy. And then Michael York was also supposed to play the part, which again, I think when the first time I watched this, I was like, is that Michael York? No, it's just another blonde, kind of initially quite, clean cut, innocent looking guy who's gonna go off the rails. But yeah, I love those early conversations between Grant, there we go, John Grant and Doc, and he's so amazed and patronized when Doc suddenly says, and I wrote it down because I love it, all the little devils are proud of hell, discontent is a luxury of the well-to-do. And then of course that's John finds himself in the same position, because he loses all his money, and then what else is there to do when you're desperate and you have nothing than to just drink the days away.
Losing it in a coin toss, this like crazy, which I should have looked up. I wanted to look up like the history of this game. I assume it is like a real game that guys do at these bars, but it is just literally like flipping a bunch of coins, and there's money on the ground, and
the simplest gambling possible.
Just kind of gamble, and you like if you win, you just run across the room, grab your money, and
yeah, is that not just like gambling distilled into its like most basic form? Because like, what is gambling if not essentially just doing that in one form or another? But I was like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah, they can't even be bothered with something fancier than that. So yeah, seeing all these little rituals and that way of life is like the most interesting part of this for me. It's technically a Christmas movie because it is Christmas Vacation, and it's so funny seeing them go around these like dusty roads, and then there will be like, you know, a guy singing a Christmas carol or Christmas decorations up somewhere.
Yeah, there's I love the Christmas aspect and a lot of the slowly integrating him into this, like, what does wind up feeling pretty alien like culture that, like, yeah, they are self-sufficient. They like initially his guide into the world is this sheriff guy who's like just putting him away, but in a very like, you know, I'm holding my liquor, it's fine. I'm it's not like the guys he eventually runs into, but it's such a bizarre place that they're in. They have that really ominous, which is another thing that I thought would be a shoot a drop or something, but like there's like a really ominous point where everybody at the bar stops
I
and
love this
turns
bit so
to
much.
like
Yeah.
a veterans like memorial thing, and they have like a moment of silence or something like that. And it's just so haunting, and then the movie just keeps going after that, back into drinking and gambling and stuff. Like, whoa, I don't know what that means exactly in the context of like Australian whatnot, but whoa.
See, I love that so much because that's like such peak British culture in a way as well, that moment, because it's, you know, it's like a memorial for the veterans of World War One, I think it's meant to be specifically. And that is such a like the like lest we forget saying, that is such a like, it's become a culture war like talking point thing in the UK about people wearing these commemorative poppies every November for Remembrance Day. And it's slightly insane. If you're like a newsreader on UK television, if you're not wearing a poppy, like the right-wing press will go absolutely insane. And it's a thing. People have them on their cars. It's a huge, it's become much bigger than just remembering, you know, veterans and those who died in the First World War. So when that popped up, I was like, oh my god, this feels so much. So I mean, it's so strange and so unsettling, but that really cut through as a like, oh lord, like this just feels like, I can't believe this is still such a big part of element of culture. Oof.
It feels culty.
Literally.
It feels like it only adds to the feeling of this like claustrophobia of like a cult that they're in, like a small town. Like they handle all their own dealings. Like they keep things hush hush. They deal with it themselves. All that. It makes it for a really creepy atmosphere in that way.
And then everyone just goes back to their drinking and doing the slot machines like nothing happened. Yep. It's so fantastic. It's yeah.
And even the most horrific part of this movie is a, you know, socially acceptable kind of, you know, activity or group ritual, which we might as well talk about now because it comes around, I don't know, halfway through or maybe a little bit later where they do go on to this kangaroo hunt. And I mean, I remembered from the first time watching this, that was like the main thing that I remembered. But watching it again this time, they actually, like, there's a shorter daytime scene where they sick a dog on one kangaroo and then they run another one over with their car. And then they go and have some more drinks. And I was like, I remembered that being way worse.
I was like, no,
I must have been really sensitive back then. But then it turns out, no, they turn around and go back in the evening. And then this scene just seems to go on forever of a real kangaroo hunt that they filmed. And it's not just like gunning them down quickly. I mean, these animals are suffering and trying to escape and injured. And I mean, anyone who is sensitive to that kind of thing, like this is going to be one of the hardest movies to get through. It certainly was for me. I have to admit this. I wasn't looking at the screen for a lot of that because there's only so much animal murder I can take on the screen.
They're so adorable.
And they're so cute.
Yeah, no, this is totally fair. I mean, this is one, I suppose, a moment where I have to admit that maybe there's something wrong with me, is that I don't find animal death that bad in films. And I don't know why. I don't know what it is. I think maybe I have this sense of like, well, if you eat, I think because I used to eat meat, I was very much like, well, you know, if you eat meat, you have to be able to look at this kind of thing because this is what happened. And now I don't eat meat anymore. Which just maybe got something ironic to do with it, but
because I was going to.
yeah, but no, it is. It's deeply horrifying, and Particularly the way that it's sort of shot with this, it's like the car headlight is acting like a searchlight in the darkness out in the bush, and like catching the reflection of the kangaroo's eyes, and they sort of like they'll go red for a second, and it's it really is quite haunting. And then reading about how like they basically went out to shoot this with a load of guys who really were kangaroo hunters, and they were so drunk for real and going so nuts that like the crew got really upset and had to like fake a power cut to get them to stop. It's like, oh my god.
Whoa. I didn't hear about the power cut.
That's a while. They had to be like, okay, we have to, there's no other way to stop this. We have to just like, I don't know, yank the lights and just wrap this up.
Turns out there's no happy way of doing this sort of thing. Shocker. There's actually no way of orchestrating this for real to make it not absolutely depressing.
Yeah, and I guess this was something that was controversial, even when it first came out. And there's a little producer's note at the end of the movie, even kind of addressing this. It says, well, at first it tells you that the hunting scenes, were taken during an actual kangaroo hunt by professional licensed hunters. So that makes all the difference. And for this reason, and because the survival of the Australian kangaroo is seriously threatened, these scenes were shown uncut after consultation with the leading animal welfare organizations in Australia and the United Kingdom. So really, it's a public service announcement. We killed them so that you would know how endangered they are.
Stop it, guys.
Yeah.
Stop it.
And so you wouldn't do it. What?
It was interesting to watch, actually, in comparison. I mean, there is, I think, in The Nightingale, Billy hunts a wallaby, but I also, partly preparing for this, I rewatched Walkabout recently, which is actually from the same year, which I hadn't quite put together in my head, and kind of quite a different sort of interpretation in a way, or like view of that kind of landscape and way of life. But there is, a sequence where the young Aboriginal boy kills a kangaroo in the more traditional way, but with a spear. But again, it's shown, it's a very different thing, because obviously he's killing it to cook and eat, and it's done with respect. And even though I'm pretty sure that is another kangaroo being killed for real on camera, it is nothing at all like this, which is just this like orgy of violence and suffering. Yeah, there's so many shots of these animals. They're not dead, they're just like horribly wounded. And then there's this kind of, as if it couldn't get any worse, then this sort of climax where like one of the men has already like fought one of these kangaroos, just like a fist fight, because they're when they stand up tall, they're really massive, and they can have these like really powerful sort of like front legs. They sort of force John Grant to like do the same with this much smaller one. And even he at that point, and this is kind of the tipping point, I suppose, for the character, even he's already like
in too deep
most of the way down this road at this point, like, but this is the real turning point where he says, oh, that this one's only a baby and it's really badly injured. And they're like, nah, you gotta do it, mate. You gotta do it. You gotta beat the shit out of him. No more Australian accent, I promise. And he does, and it's really horrible. That's a moment at which I turned away, actually. I couldn't really handle this long, protracted sequence of this poor...
Oh, Marc and I were looking through our fingers.
Yeah.
I mean, once you're killing a kangaroo with your bare hands, you probably know you've hit some kind of a rock bottom.
Yeah, the wrestling's pretty rough. It's just like, I know the blood it's probably not actually wounded. I hope that they're not actually fighting a wounded one, but still, it's like, this kangaroo doesn't want to do this. Leave him alone.
This kangaroo did not sign a release form. Like, this is not okay.
No.
And they're so big, and the way that they kind of stand up, I don't know, it almost looks like killing people. They're so human-like.
Some emergence of person and bunny, it's like horrifying. Like, it's like whatever happens in your head with that combination is no fun.
But it is weird how, I don't know, the movie does seem to still kind of just continue apace after that. Like, I know that this is kind of an escalation, but also, I don't know, I think maybe the movie as a whole, what kind of holds me back from like loving it is that it does seem to plateau after so many scenes of just like mindless debauchery. Even when this kangaroo thing happens, the night seems to just kind of continue as normal. He does eventually the next day kind of wander away in disgust, which he's done at other points in the film before.
Well, that's because he maybe sort of had a little cute night with Donald Pleasant.
Yeah, there's an implication, I guess, that there was some sort of a same-sex encounter that drunkenly happened right before they pass out. Of course, they keep it kind of mysterious or suggested. And I felt like it didn't really, it kept that so vague. And this earlier scene where he's kind of about to have sex with a woman and ends up vomiting and running away, that maybe it is trying to go a little deeper with something about masculinity here. But I do feel like there's a strange, almost like slightness to this movie when it ends, which I think you kind of talked about, Laura, with the ending scene where he kind of ends up just back where he started with this bartender, by the schoolhouse where he was originally coming from, who's just like, hey, have a nice holiday. And it does kind of almost feel like that. Like it's more of like he had this regrettable, ugly binge that we're happy is over. But I'm not sure I really take this movie as, the battle of the civilized man being almost consumed by savagery. I don't know. It did, for some reason, I felt kind of stuck on the surface with this, which might have caused it to be something more like, truly great as opposed to something with a lot of memorable moments and, places to discover in this. But I don't know if anybody else felt that way.
I get that. I did. It feels, I really did have it in my head that the kind of escalation of the kangaroo hunt and then this like possible gay encounter, in my head, that was the climax. And then it was like, oh, wait, there is like another 20, 25 minutes to go. I don't know. I guess watching it again, I kind of saw it more as this is the kind of shit that's probably beneath the surface of your average guy walking down the dusty road in a deserted Australian town. You never know what your very ordinary English teacher has been up to on his holiday break. But that is an interesting point. And exactly. You don't get that much of a real grip on who this guy really is, other than absolutely desperate to get out of the middle of nowhere in Australia. I also very clocked that, he has these periodic visions of his sexy Bondi Beach, Sydney girlfriend in her red swimsuit. But when she kind of stands over him, he gets his cold beer bottle and sort of puts it between her tits. And it's very much drinking the kind of phallic symbol. It's all, this is not a film about being into women, I guess is what I'm saying. This is, it's all about homosocial/homosexual bonding in a way.
Which distract you, certainly, from your red-suited babe in Sydney. And I where I land with the, what am I supposed to feel at the end is sort of, it feels something like I don't think there is something all that deep. I think that's, of course, sort of inherent to it, which I think can be kind of frustrating for a viewer, especially since it does. I think it's partially what the film is doing that leads us to feel like there should be more, and also just how we're trained to be like, well, but I mean, I wind up walking away, and the more I think about it, the more I like the idea that it is kind of a dark joke of at the end there, and he is just going to go forward with his life, and but this stuff is inside of him, and this stuff are things that he has experienced, and this stuff is out there regardless of how far away from it he gets in lovely Sydney on the beach. I don't know. There's I don't even want to give it some kind of big nihilist, nothing means anything man Cormac McCarthy thing, although it does kind of ring Cormac McCarthy in some ways, of that sort of just some shit happened, it got fucked up, he walked away kind of stuff. It kind of is but it kind of is that for me in some ways.
I think that's the best way to look at it, because I do appreciate that, unlike Straw Dogs, which we just talked about on the podcast, it doesn't feel very deterministic or rigged, or it's really trying to sell
now there's
you
a
on
lesson,
something. Yeah, which part of me does wonder if maybe because this was based on a novel, that there's just something missing from the internal monologue that we would have gotten on the page doesn't really go that deep on screen. I do think that the film is trying to do something a little bit more that it doesn't quite pull off with that stuff. Because, it does get pretty dramatic at the end where he's decided he's going to try to kill Dr. Loomis, whatever his name is, Donald Pleasance's character, and then tries to shoot himself, which kind of just gets hand-waved away. And yeah, I think that really, as long as things were kept mysterious, I do think this is a very good example of just atmosphere and really good filmmaking on behalf of this filmmaker, too, who didn't seem to necessarily follow up on this line of style with his other
some of the
movies.
editing and like the chase sequence, like during the day when they're chasing these like kangaroos and speeding through the desert, it's like cut. It's like kind of amazing. It's thrilling.
Yeah, absolutely. And all those kind of nightmarish little flashes of images that are so
psychedelic almost.
Yeah, it reminded me of Midnight Cowboy a little bit, just some of those like images, and that, Donald Pleasance with the two little like coins with the X's over them, just down on the eyes. Ooh, yeah.
So for me, it's kind of a strength and a weakness that it doesn't necessarily go further than that, but it's not something I would unwatch, and I'll give everyone a chance to say whether they would unwatch the film. I'm not getting that vibe, but that's kind of my final thought, that I think kind of what it is and what it isn't are equally interesting, even if at some point it kind of stalls out and cancels each other out on both sides for me. But what about you, Seth? Is this Julie Son watched the Kangaroo Massacre?
I would do that, but I was surprised. Yeah, I was I had to think about it, which is a good sign sometimes from a movie, that I did have to kind of stew on it. And I did wind up, I really like this one and the way that it is in particular in how it's displaying this sort of like, this is how things are done. Like like using the chaos, I think, is not just frivolous. It's reiterating that us getting shit-faced and like destroying this bar like every single night is sort of part of making the status quo, and it is just as important as turning and giving your vow of your moment of silence to the veterans monument or whatever. I thought that was kind of really interesting about this, and you can see the fear in their eyes of like, if you step away from any of this or break the mold in any sort of way, that's what's scary to them. They don't know what else to do other than to do what they do every day, which is insane. And yeah, it is kind of just like a wild little ride. I'm down. I might watch this again, actually.
Oh, sicko. All right, what about you, Laura? Any final
I'm still going to cover
thoughts?
my eyes. Those sweet little babies. I'm still going to cover my eyes.
Oh, yeah. See, again, I feel like I feel cold-hearted for being like, it's horrible, but I don't know. I don't find it too bad. I don't know. I'm less sensitive to animal death. I really don't know what it is. Maybe it's because I don't have a pet. I don't know what's wrong with me. Maybe if I had cats or dogs or something, I would be more.
What kangaroo hurt you?
Yeah.
Who hurt you?
I had a terrible incident in London Zoo as a child. No. This was my second time watching it. So yeah, definitely would not unwatch. I probably will not rewatch this anytime soon, unless it's for some kind of work related project.
I think 2 could be good.
Yeah, maybe tap out at that point. And there are certainly films that engage with some of these ideas and representations of like post-colonial Australia that go down a little bit more easily than this one. Although it's been going down fairly easy because in London right now it's the evening. I've been drinking wine. I went to my local supermarket and I got this Australian wine, which it's like the most ridiculously like British Australian colonial thing. It's called Oxford Landing, and it says on the back, celebrating the Qatar Airways Lions men's tour to Australia 2025. That'll be the rugby, I think. This commemorative wine unites the heritage of the British and Irish Lions, TM, and Oxford Landing, which I'm assuming is the name of a place in Australia. Again, Oxford, like, so ridiculous. Coming together as one on the banks of South Australia's mighty Murray River, Oxford Landing's grapes have thrived since 1958. So I wasn't going to be drinking any beer because I can't stand it, but I thought this stupid, very British colonial Australian wine would do the trick. So that's helped wash down the experience of Wake in Fright.
You drank 10 of them.
Have another on me.
I know. I've looked.
No, another.
I'll down it.
Come back.
Lovely.
All right. Well, let's jump forward many decades here to 2018 with The Nightingale, made by an actual Australian filmmaker, Jennifer Kent. And, it feels like this should be obvious, or I should say this a lot on this podcast, but boy, what an unpleasant film.
Australian gloom.
Like, holy shit. Wow. This was a rough one.
I didn't expect it at all.
Yeah, I think when you suggested, like, oh, it's great, let's do Wake in Fright. Do you want to do it with The Nightingale? I was like, oh, yeah, like we should do it, because I had seen it before, and I was like, oh yeah, that film is really good, but now I have to watch it again. But I am glad I did in a strange way. But so, was this your first time, both of you, seeing this?
Yeah,
yes.
I had seen the poster a lot, which is very unassuming. I don't know. There's just, as far as just where the content goes and some of the darkness goes, it's kind of, I thought it was just like I don't know, something about the poster was just like, it's like a Netflix movie or something.
The one that's just of her face with the bird just going across it. Yeah.
I don't know. Or like maybe just like a kind of a creepy movie, but no. Yeah. Well.
Yeah.
And this was Jennifer Kent's follow-up to The Babadook, which is, by far her most well-known movie, which it's really interesting to see how these initial directors of these, what I would consider the initial wave of elevated horror films that were hits, which to me would be The Babadook, It Follows, and The Witch, probably. I think those were all within a few years of each other. And
yeah, Hereditary, all that.
Yeah, and all of them, they kind of followed them up with movies that really broke away from that weren't horror films, whether we're talking about this or Robert Eggers doing The Lighthouse, or David Robert Mitchell, I think that's his name, who did Under the Silver Lake, which I love, but was definitely like the biggest total flip from what had come before. And it looks like Robert Eggers is kind of making his way slowly back to doing like commercial horror films, at least his own version of them. Who knows what's going to happen with David Robert Mitchell? I guess there's an It Follows 2 that's going to be coming out at some point. But Jennifer Kent has not made a film since this. So I really wonder what the deal is and where, her heart is really going to be. But I do see this being a pretty metaphorical film, or it definitely is about its thematic subject matter in a way that The Babadook also kind of put in the foreground. So maybe if that's an elevated horror movie, this is like an elevated rape revenge movie.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot more on this film's mind than I had any idea going in. And honestly, even like an hour into it, it still didn't seem to me that it was going to be going into this, I guess, more ambitious territory than it starts out in. But that's what makes this interesting, right?
It feels like it's a film that's in conversation with the Western as well, which is like another sort of, it's like a subgenre of your Australian quote unquote Western, like kind of a bit like The Proposition. Do you guys ever see The Proposition, the film written by Nick Cave? It's kind of like this, but more for boys. You know what I mean? Like it's like this hyper masculine. I think again that is a revenge film, as far as I remember. It's been ages since I saw that, but I just remember the script being written by Nick Cave. I think it was quite brave for Jennifer Kent to make this after The Babadook, because it was clearly, it's not what people would have been expecting. And I do remember, when it came out, even among a lot of like my peers, people like fucking hated this. Like people really went after this as like, this is so exploitative and unnecessary, and the violence and there's a lot of sexual violence in it, particularly in like the first kind of 40 minutes. It is quite sounds trite to say, front loaded with really nasty stuff. And in fairness though, I mean, I think a lot of my peers saw it in a film festival context, where obviously when you go and see a film at a film festival, you have very little sense ahead of time of what it is you're going to be seeing. The films don't have, like certificates. They don't have, content warnings, none of that. So people really, some of my peers really were going into this having absolutely no idea what it was. And yeah, it's a film I think I did also watch in lockdown 3, because maybe I was just like, well, my mood is so bad, I'll just watch all these things that have been on my list for ages that I know will make me feel bad because I already feel bad, whatever. But I think I did.
That'll help.
I know, that'll definitely help. I think I did do this one over 2 sittings the first time I saw it, because I just needed a rest. But
I didn't do it in one.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
it is a really long film too.
That's the thing. In this streaming context, you are kind of like, once they do one of the bigger scenes early on in the film, you're like, whoa, it's over 2 hours. We got a lot to go. Oh no.
Yeah. But I actually appreciated it more this time around than the first time I saw it. I think, I don't know, I think I can't help but really admire the sheer ballsiness of her making this after the Babadook, and
very ambitious,
and really tackling these really really difficult topics without flinching. And I guess we'll probably get more into it a lot. There has been a fair amount of criticism of this film in the way that it tries to sort of find it connects the experience of this young Irish woman who's been, quote unquote, transported to Australia as a convict and is essentially an indentured servant, who has no freedom really at all, is completely kind of at the whim of this. What is he? He's a lieutenant army guy played by Sam Claflin. And her experience, drawing a parallel between her experience and the experience of this young Aboriginal guy, Billy. And I did have to look this up because I wasn't totally sure. This film takes place in the time of what was called the Black War. So this is in Tasmania in 1825. And it was this conflict between white British settlers and Aboriginal Australians that basically kind of, precipitated their near extinction. So heavy stuff. You should know what you're getting into when you sit down and watch this one, guys. This is a much
welcome to Unwatchables.
I could see how knowing that it's going there would help if you were watching this a second time.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I was struggling with this for a while, because like you were saying, it is so front loaded with just sheer ugliness, to the point where it's almost overbearing. And it does follow the template of the, for lack of a better word, rape revenge film, for quite a while, which, I guess you could just call a regular revenge film. But, there is something specific about it being, a woman who is kind of taking back power from her attackers. But this does, for a while, really follow that template of, there's that inciting incident, which here is so unspeakably horrific. It's crazy to think that it's even as horrible as this scene is, it's not the first or the last sexual assault that happens in the movie, or, incidents of cruelty and humiliation. And I don't know if it's a spoiler to say what happens, but I feel like this is probably like the scene that people would have the hardest time getting through, where her entire family is killed quite brutally during the sexual assault, including the baby. And and then she has this kind of very almost instantaneous switch, into this fierce resolve afterwards to go after them, which was, I don't know, it seemed a little sudden for me from what we got from her character before. I was able to kind of roll with that. But there are some times throughout the movie where I felt they could have handled her doing a really quick about face in either losing her nerve or getting it back, that I wasn't quite following. But I guess I was a little concerned there for a while that all this movie is going to have up its sleeve was a very unpleasant time and, just waiting for her to get her revenge. But it does start to expand out from there, to become more about including the indigenous people within this larger, genocidal project of the white male colonizers. But boy, it takes a long time for that to kind of unfold, because this is kind of an epic, like you said, Western or kind of adventure movie that comes out. But, do you think it ever gets to be like just too much, because there's still many more scenes of horrible killings of, the indigenous people, more sexual assaults and everything? You ever feel like we got the point at a certain point, or there's a method to its unpleasantness?
In short, it did get to be too much for me. But as to the method, I think that's where that's where the conversation kind of goes to. I think it does wind up unraveling out into a place that is like zeroing in on this native person and this woman who has been totally wronged by the male dominator machine and everything like that, and sort of pairing them together. And I could understand someone like maybe critiquing it, saying that it's equating the two. I don't know if I would go that far. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but like, yeah, that they are like, hey, we got the same problems, you and me. It's like, no, I don't think it does that really. They are. I like how the relationship between the two is very gradual. Like, I mean, she's not like immediately like, oh, this is the nice white woman who isn't racist, because, she's the main character. It's like, no, she is. Like, and it's not that she even necessarily like, in our terms, probably even gives up that by the end. It is like she just starts to see this person as a human being and like someone who is suffering alongside her and everything, and just like maybe actually becoming a friend in some regard, a place of refuge for her in this like really dark time. But yeah, I don't know exactly what what more it does with that. Yeah, I have a few question marks over my head, I guess.
Yeah, I get that for sure. I was, perhaps a mistake reading some Letterboxd reviews of this and getting slightly frustrated with a few people who were, I think, just not, we're again just being like, oh my God, this like white feminist coming in and being like, oh, it's she's trying to equate these two things. I don't really think that's true. And also, I think some people that there is, Jennifer Kent does not go into a huge amount of detail, and I'm glad she doesn't actually, because I don't think we need to be spoon-fed it, although maybe we do because people on Letterboxd weren't getting it. The way that England treated Ireland, like, it's absolutely horrifying. I mean, it's not on the same scale of devastation as what's happened to Aboriginal Australians, but those,
not a race.
No, exactly. But England rather, I guess, did enact colonial violence on Ireland. So there are more similarities there than if you initially take it at the face value of like, oh my God, it's the same. And again, I think some people were misinterpreting it slightly as she's saying that, because there has been a bit of a trope, I would say, in some Australian and New Zealand films of using a woman being raped as like a metaphor for, quote unquote, like land being raped and ruined. And I don't actually really think that's what is going on here. I don't think she's really using it as a symbol. I think this is just the quite literal forms of violence that were being enacted on people in subservient positions, whether they were the indentured servants of the kind of upper classes in power or indigenous Australians. But yeah, I mean, I did have a very different experience, I suppose, than you guys, because I had seen this before. But it almost feels like, and I do think that this film was made with an Australian audience in mind primarily. Like, I think this in a way is for Australians to watch and understand. Partly because I think some of that context is historical context is slightly missing, deliberately so. And in some ways, it feels like Jennifer Kent was cashing in her blank check from the Babadook to make this project. Mm-hmm. That I also kind of feel like it is set up as your much more conventional rape revenge film, and then it actually takes a little bit of a swerve and becomes slightly about something else. It becomes more about the experience of Aboriginal Australians, and perhaps she had some awareness that if she made a film about that from the jump, it wouldn't have got the attention and kind of international distribution that it might have deserved. But yeah, I think it's quite a fascinating deconstruction of the rape revenge genre, which is not a genre I'm at all an expert in or particularly a fan of. But yeah, I find films about like the rot of British colonialism like so fascinating. I think because maybe living in the UK and being someone from a kind of posh family, you just notice it and you feel it everywhere in terms of attitudes, things that are kind of glossed over. It just feels so part of British culture that I'm so interested in seeing filmmakers kind of try and dissect this stuff from their perspectives. Yeah,
and I don't think it equates like her trauma to the indigenous trauma so much that it just contextualizes it within what's going on. If anything, the movie is about her realizing that she does, even in her own subjugated position, there is some sort of a level of privilege, which obviously she's free to walk around and pretend like she is that Billy is her captive. And so she does have us, there is a power imbalance between them, even with them both being victims. And I think the movie is careful to kind of show that. If anything, I think it might spell it out too much, because I think the movie takes a lot of efforts to make Billy, who's her guide, the indigenous character, more than just, a facilitator of her revenge. And it ultimately ends up becoming maybe more about his, which I like. I think the trade-off, though, is sometimes he does feel like he's there to kind of spell out the film's ideas and keep teaching her about these things kind of explicitly. And I would have appreciated maybe him seeming a little more like an individual. And maybe it had something to do with his performance. I don't feel like whoever the actor was brought like a whole bunch dynamically to this character. And it's one of the few things that I think are really interesting that I appreciate conceptually in this, that maybe in the particulars it doesn't quite finesse. And maybe that goes back to some of Claire's character and the decisions that she makes throughout, that getting her from point A to B, where she actually doesn't even end up wanting to kill the guy and instead gives him like this monologue telling him off in front of people and then leaves, which is a nice subversion of expectations. I'm not sure if I totally bought it either. I don't know if it's a performance thing or a script thing. I don't know. It was a constant back and forth with me with this movie, as far as like warming up to it and then but I wasn't quite sold. But it was nice to have something to grapple with after what it initially seems to be.
I feel like sometimes
it's surprising. Oh, you go.
I was just going to say quickly, I feel like sometimes this is more, just thinking about what you've just said, more a film where the plot has to drive the character rather than the other way around, which is sometimes a bit of a problem. Yeah, just keeping that plot forward and rather than letting the characters drive the plot in a more natural way. Yeah.
And I mean, that's a good jump off point on the subject of plot. That is one of my other things that holds me back with this movie, is that I feel like what's brought here is a lot of plot and not much aesthetic or style or X factor for me that's going on into it. It is shot very straight, very, I don't know, like it's a movie, and they are in a gloomy forest, and there's characters moving along where, like, that all sounds really basic to say, but it is like, by comparison, like Wake in Fright has like a lot going on style wise. There is like what gets me excited about it is this sort of like underlying kind of atmosphere going on, which is just huge for me in films in general, especially and goes a long way for films that are bleak and difficult to deal with, and maybe like beside the point and kind of silly for me to ask for that, but that was something that held me back and made it more of like a longer 2 hours for me, this one.
I get that. I felt like, to me, more of a deliberate choice to not like aestheticize the landscapes. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I don't know, I was thinking about it in comparison with like the sort of forests of Tasmania. I was reminded of, well, The Piano is one of my favorite films. And it was making me think about the kind of the forests and the rain and The Piano. And that film does sometimes get flack, and I get why, it's kind of aesthetic. You know, it's beautifying, it's prettifying of the kind of colonized New Zealand landscape. And it felt like a deliberate choice to me, at least. I don't know, that's how I interpreted it in The Nightingale, of like, we're not going to give you widescreen, we're not going to give you like vistas, we're just going to like give you this like central, quite compact frame, and it is fairly unadorned. But I do know what you mean. I don't think Jennifer Kent is someone who, I don't know, I don't really remember The Babadook being a film that's like particularly stylistically adventurous in some ways. And maybe that's unfair. I've only seen it once. It was years ago. But yeah, I do get that. It is shot in a fairly straightforward. The camera looks at the thing, and you know, and there are some sort of nightmare sequences which are not as effective, as not as adventurous or as effective as maybe they could be, given what they portray. But I don't know. I was thinking about it in terms of like how, I suppose, particularly aware of myself as like this person from England looking at these films and being like, wow, the incredible exotic landscape. And again, after watching Walkabout so recently, with like the British director Nicholas Roeg, and how he, you know, he can't help himself, he does exoticize that landscape, and you know, like the incredible vistas, and like here comes the didgeridoo and like the animals, and isn't it all amazing? And this felt like something quite decidedly different from that, but yeah, not certainly not as engaging visually, and a lot of grey and brown and miserable forests and mud.
Yeah, I don't know what I would do or what my actual note would be. So that's like, it's one of those things where it's like an unhelpful critique but like, because I agree you could go too far into like making this into a fantasy movie or something. I guess it's just something about utilizing the medium it's in, I guess, is always going to be a thing that makes me really go to bat, or you know, feel a little bit more lukewarm or something.
It felt more like high-end TV, didn't it? Like aesthetically.
I didn't. Yeah, that was like a TV show. Yeah, a Netflix TV show. Where very, very well done one. But it is like an example of that style, which is, it's about the script and about the developing characters and things like that.
Also, I don't know if you guys saw that. I think the only thing she's done post Nightingale was she did an episode of Guillermo del Toro's Cabinet of Curiosities thing, like his anthology Netflix show. And the only episode I saw was a Jennifer Kent one, because I was curious, and it was about what a surprise, it was about grief. It was about Andrew Lincoln, and I can't remember who played the wife, but Andrew Lincoln from The Walking Dead being in Canada, and again, they were bird watching, and it was all about grief, and it was quite good, but it was exactly what you'd expect from her. But nothing since then, I think, which is kind of a shame.
Yeah, that's interesting. And you can't help but suspect that a lot of women directors somehow magically seem to not get the multiple chances that a lot of male directors who make flops do. I mean, because this movie did not break the box office. Again, surprise, surprise. This was not like super commercial film. But yeah, it is interesting, because I did read that about what she did for the Guillermo del Toro series, and The Babadook did help kick off one of my least favorite, trends in modern horror movies, where they are just not even thinly veiled. They're just overtly about, dealing with grief and trauma, which kind of takes the mysteriousness that makes horror scary out of the equation, in my opinion. Which is why I think a movie like The Witch holds up a little bit better, because it's a little bit more ambiguous about that stuff. And
Wake in Fright almost felt like one of those, but it doesn't go there. Like it's one that actually ends before it would turn into like, and now we have to make it so that the town is a bunch of like mystical, evil, like zombies or something. I don't know.
Or like at the end, you get a very obvious finger wag where it's like, and masculinity is really bad. Or I don't know. Yeah, if we didn't already get that from the general vibe. Yeah.
Yeah, and this one does kind of wear that stuff on its sleeve. This is what it's about. But it is interesting to see it actually kind of shift from following the genre tropes to denying us the, her getting revenge against him, even though we do get to a little catharsis there eventually, but it's not from her. So yeah, I'm gonna give this, like, there's things I admire about this. I want to give it a lot of credit for, even if I don't think it totally works. It's one of those kind of more in theory than in practice things a lot of the time for me. But I was certainly grateful that it went there, because it is such a time investment, to be sitting through. I would not unwatch it, but I don't think it quite works as well if we're just comparing it to Wake in Fright. It's almost like Wake in Fright was stronger to me in the early going, and this was stronger to me in the latter going. But overall, the whole project is one that seems a little more intellectual than, viscerally successful in the moment. But what about you, Seth? Where is this on the watch-unwatch scale?
I mean, I think I'm at an unwatch with this one. And it's rather innocuous, I wouldn't say necessarily, but because it is very upsetting. But it is something about the, like, I don't know, Netflix TV style of it, and it just doesn't really offer me more to stay in the room with. Like, I don't know that I would have actually finished this movie if I had not done it for a podcast, if I'm being totally Unwatchables on.
Can I say I was a little concerned about you continuing on after the first half of this movie?
I would not blame anyone for tapping out of this film after the first half an hour. I truly wouldn't. I would never judge anyone for just being like, you know what, not for me, bye.
And I do agree that it does eventually flirt with more ideas. It's just after a very long time, because I also just really mostly, like, even in some Tarantino movies that I enjoy, I still find the revenge plot to be like a kind of a stumbling block for me. Like, it is just something I have a hard time, not that I can't empathize with the idea and things like that. I just feel like it's hard not to feel like where it's going. And this is, I guess my problem is, and maybe you guys can chime in a little bit, is the fact that it subverts the revenge thing, where she goes in and you think maybe she's gonna she finds him and she's gonna expose him in a big way, or even maybe she does have a pistol and she's gonna shoot him finally, but she doesn't. She doesn't actually get her revenge herself. She just kind of embarrasses him a little bit and sings this song that they is clearly a jab between the two of them, their past and everything like that. But then the movie, I wonder if it would have been more subversive or interesting to me if she had just walked away then and that was it. But it's not the end of the movie, right? It is followed by then Billy does go in and get the revenge for her because of his growing empathy that he's had for her and her struggle, and also maybe some of his own, this guy clearly being an example of colonial bullshit that he hates, obviously, and he focuses it there. It's still, and then just in the end, then he also dies because he goes forward with this revenge. Billy does, or apparently he does. The movie ends before he does, but I don't know. Yeah, I just felt like, I don't know. Yeah, that was kind of it just couldn't resist. I don't know if it necessarily does subvert it or not. I don't know if you guys feel the same way.
I guess it is. I mean, to me, it feels like it subverts it in the sense of the female rape revenge narrative is that final revenge that we've been promised is handed over to someone else in a way that's emblematic of him, representing a much larger scale, injustice. But no, I do know what you mean. And in a way,
and he takes the consequence.
Yeah. And it is, you could argue, and I kind of feel like it's a little bit clumsy that there's this other Aboriginal, much older man, this guide who is guiding the soldiers as they make their way through this landscape, called Charlie, who initially seems kind of complicit in the way that they mistreat other Aboriginal people that they encounter along the way. But in the end kind of leads them into a trap, and leaves them stranded deliberately, and is killed. And it turns out that this was the man that taught Billy, who had been raised as like, you know, a white British boy and had his kind of entire identity stamped out of him. This older man, Charlie, had taught Billy how to kind of the language, the ceremonies, the rituals, everything. And so then that becomes Billy's act of revenge. But this is all slightly rushed over in the like final section of the film in a way, and I don't know if that fully works. Did we need to see, maybe we needed to see Charlie and Billy interact at the beginning, because otherwise it's entirely off screen. But I see the intention there, but I don't know if it fully works. Yeah
I pretty much agree. Like it's giving him something more directly personal, which we kind of already had. Like we didn't need added on top of that. Maybe we didn't need like so many more scenes of the violence against the Aborigines to make that point. Like we kind of got it at that point. And I think you're right. The subversion is that's just kind of handing over the revenge for him to get it for himself. But it seems like we are supposed to consider her big speech to be something she considers revenge, you know, to herself. It is fulfilling something that is actually getting her something back. I didn't necessarily buy it. I was still just kind of like, a speech and a song. Like, I guess I like the idea, but I'm not really getting from point A to B with this character like that convincingly for me. But I appreciate the effort.
No, that's fair enough. I don't know. I think it kind of worked a bit more for me because the only time you ever see the Sam Claflin. Sam Claflin is so good in this as well. He is so
I agree
reprehensible.
with that. He's a very compelling, loathsome villain.
Yeah, because I feel like he normally does play like heroes or like these kind of smooth guys. And he is so reprehensible, and like good on him in a way for taking this part, because people must have warned him, don't do this part, because he is
so
the
ugly,
devil in this film. And
I hadn't seen him in anything else, but I like opened up his Letterboxd page and just laughed at like it's all Hunger Games movies and romantic comedies and stuff.
Yeah, like Me Before You, where he falls in love with Emilia Clarke and he's in a wheelchair. Like that's more his usual vibe. This was and I've shout out to, I want to say his name's Damon Herriman, who plays the sergeant, who's the guy who played Charles Manson in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And he was in Together, the Alison Brie, Dave Franco film. But he's so great. I love his like weird face. I find him such a compelling screen presence. He's an Australian actor, but I feel like normally plays not Australian. Anyway, sorry, Sam Claflin. I feel like the only tiny moment of vulnerability you see, I don't even know if that's the right word. You ever see with that character is at the very beginning when she sings and he wells up with tears, and it feels like an act of it feels like it's intended to be an act of humiliation at the end there. I don't know how effective it really is, but I don't know, it kind of works on me. I suppose with the implication that, you know, earlier on in the film she does kill the young guy who killed her baby, and it's very nasty. And I think I kind of assumed that she's so horrified by her own violence that she sort of rejects the idea that she can actually go through with that again and kill the Sam Claflin character. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. Yeah.
And she also probably knows that she can't get out of the situation. Like,
that's
it's
true.
A dead end if she does. Which does wind up being a dead end for Billy. Like, if you actually do touch this guy at all, you know, you'll suffer the consequences.
Yeah, because they do get away. They do manage to get out of the town, and then he's drawn back. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. You could actually do an interesting comparison here between this film and Walkabout, in the sense of, I don't know, they're two films that end with a young Aboriginal guy dead in a way that one is an explicit suicide, and this is almost a kind of suicidal revenge mission. And I don't know, slightly to sort of for the sake of a white female character. And I don't know, there is something there, but I don't know. I found it affecting for me. Yeah.
All right. Well, two films that definitely have earned their spot in the Unwatchables canon in very different ways. The animal violence was a lot more palatable in this one. It's just if you're a human, you're kind of out of luck. But
yeah, they just hunt a little wallaby, and
that's all.
And Billy is so, he as it dies, as it's dead, he strokes it, and he says, "Oh, you're a good one, and it's oh god, it's moved me.
I just told myself the wallaby was asleep.
He's just having a little nap by the fire, nice and warm.
I've been to a petting zoo too recently and pet wallabies and kangaroos, and it was those are the softest things in the universe, kangaroos. I had no idea.
What? Okay, I need to go.
I had never
hang out
pet
with
one.
Some. Yeah.
By far, top of the heap, softest guy. Don't shoot him.
God, no wonder this was so traumatic for you. I'm so sorry.
They found you where you lived.
I have personal reasons.
But at least in this film, nobody was harmed in the making of The Nightingale, except maybe the audience. But Laura, thank you so much. This was great fun, and you were definitely the best person to have on for these particular films. I'm so glad that you chose them.
Thank you. What's wrong with me?
That's what we find out on this podcast.
We still don't know what's wrong with us.
Yeah, you guys do this to yourselves. I don't know why.
I'm going to go watch some Bugs Bunny.
Yeah.
For sure.
Definitely. So for your book, is there a place that you would prefer people go to get it? Should they be interested?
Should you be interested? Yes, it's called Icons of Cinema, Greta Gerwig. It's part of a little series of books about directors. There's also Icons of Cinema, Baz Luhrmann, and Icons of Cinema, Wes Anderson. And if you're interested, if you're in the UK, you can order it from any lovely independent bookshop, or from Waterstones, the big chain bookshop, or Amazon if you prefer. I think it's also going to be stocked in the shop of the BFI on the South Bank, so hope you pick it up there.
Hey.
Beautiful. If you're outside the UK, I am less sure. Maybe Amazon is the only way you can get it. But yeah, if you're interested at all, or if you have a young budding cinephile in your life who would love to learn a little bit more about Greta Gerwig and or the French New Wave alongside Greta Gerwig's work, check it out. Thank you.
All right. And anything else you want to draw people's attention to that you have going on outside of that?
I'm reviewing mostly for Empire at the moment, which is nice. I did get my first, not exactly hate email, but kind of hate email the other night. And it was because somebody has put my review of the Thursday Murder Club on the Wikipedia page, which I do not appreciate. So
that means you're really doing a good job.
I hope so. I just got like an RC email from clearly quite an old man the other night. And I was like, why have I got this? And then my girlfriend Googled me and was like, it's because someone's put you on the Wikipedia page. So, oh no. So yeah, reviewing for Empire. I also have a Substack, which I don't update very often, but I'm trying to get more into, which is called Mise en Veine, which is an incredible pun that, again, my girlfriend came up with. I have no, I can't take any credit for that. But
yay, girlfriend.
Yeah, yay, girlfriends. We love them. And you can find me on Blue Sky. I'm not really on Twitter anymore, but yeah, Blue Sky or Instagram or Substack.
All right. Well, I hope you don't get any more hate mail after this episode.
Now let's crack open some beers. Come on.
Cheers.
Let's have another.
Just one more.
Have another, mate. Gotta have another beer, mate.
Another, mate. Or whatever that thing was that you got.
My very. I've lost the accent completely. Never mind. No more talking. It's over.
Unwatchables is produced by Tony Scarpitti, hosted by me, Marc Dottavio, and Seth Troyer, with artwork by Micah Kraus. You can find Seth and I on Letterboxd under Marc Dottavio and Sloth Troyer. You can also check us out at unwatchableспod.com for links to our Twitter and Instagram, or support us on Patreon for bonus content and to have a say in what we watch. Thanks for listening.